Hello everybody and welcome to the Bad Astro Imaging channel. Today we're going to take a look at my data that I collected of the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. I keep wanting to call it the Horsehead Nebula for some reason. Anyway, it's an animal's head. We're going to look at the Elephant Trunk Nebula. We're going to take my data and we're going to start using and applying Bill Blanshan's tools, his narrowband normalization, his color mask, his mask blur tools. This process is heavily dependent upon Bill Blanshan's tools. I'll leave a link to his channel so that you can go grab the tools that I use that belong to him, that he created and developed. Just a quick notice, this will require that you have the latest update of Pixinsight. That's just the only way to get Bill's tools to work and to use this data the same way that I use it. So without further ado, let's get into processing this image. Good afternoon and welcome back to the Bad Astro Imaging channel. Today we're going to take a look at the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. We're going to be using some of Bill Blanshan's normalization tools, his mask and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get started. You can see I've already got my icons pulled up. I'll leave a Google Drive link to all the tools that I use on a regular basis, so you can process this the same way I do, or you can do it any way you please. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to open up. So we got to go here and to master. And this is my auto cropped, drizzled image. We're going to go ahead and close out the auto crop version of it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to this identifier and I'm going to double click on it. And I'm just going to call it trunk _1, just because I've already processed this out and I've got one sitting down there at the bottom, just like this. Ta-da! Anyway, all right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to give a little STF, and I can use this, but I have learned, to me it's just easier to go up here and hit this little icon with the radioactive symbol over the screen. I just hit that and you can see the green cast that we've got that's common with the one-shot color cameras. This was taken with the Poseidon one-shot color. I think they call it Poseidon C Pro. Anyway, and we also took this with the Askar FRA 500 and we reduced it down to f3.9. I think that comes out to like 338 millimeters or something like that. Anyway, we got our screen stretch there, and we're going to, first thing we're going to do is apply our DBE. And if you watch the first video, you know I like to use Sean Nelson's version of that. Sean Nelson Visible Dark, excuse me if I mispronounced that the first time. But we're just going to apply our sample points around the outside of the perimeter of the image. And we are going to leave our tolerance at 2. We're going to use division. That's what I always use. I can't tell much difference between subtraction and division. So I always just use division. We'll come down here and we're going to hit our little green check mark. And then we're going to hit the little X mark. That way we don't get DBE barking at us. We're trying to close an image. And we're going to kill the screen stretch up here at the top, kill it, and then we're going to reapply it just so we can see what we've got. You can see we got some pretty good images. I also want to note that this was the filter that I used was the Askar Color Magic 3 nanometer dual band filter. And the first thing I want you to notice is that there is no halo around that star. And I'll show you an image I processed earlier with the Optolong L Extreme and how extreme the halo was there. So I'm really pleased with that filter. Hope to do a review and some comparisons on that soon. But anyway, back to the processing. So we have, what have we done? We did the DBE. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our spectrophoto supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Anyway, spectrophotometric color calibration. And the closest thing I can find, first of all, you can see my sensor is the 571 up here. And the closest thing I can find is to use the Optolong L Ultimate in the filter drop down menu. There may be something better that comes out later, but for right now, that's what I use. Anyway, L Ultimate on the red, green, and blue. And there really isn't any background, what I consider to be dark black sky in this, so we're not going to worry about a region of interest. We're just going to make sure we got our filter selected and our sensor selected. And we're going to go over here and we're just going to drag and drop this new instance on top of our image. Give that just a moment to run its cycle. All right, you can tell by our lines that we've got a pretty good color correction going on there. Close that out. I always like to kill the screen stretch and then reapply it just to see what we're working with. So far you can see we got a pretty good image. Noise is not terrible. I think I got 3 hours on this one. All right, our next process, if you have it, is going to be the blur exterminator. And on this particular image, you see there's a little bit of haloing going on here. I'm going to reduce the star halos down to minus 0.1 or 0.10, however you want to look at it. Sometimes it's easier just to type that in. And everything else we're going to leave the same. I'm going to drag and drop again. All right, blur exterminator's done. And from what I can tell, not too bad, but there is some green in here, so we're going to go ahead and flush that out. And I'm going to use the SC&R tool. And if you're not using my icons, you can go up here to processes, all processes, and then SC&R. But anyway, the green channel I'm going to drop, I'm not going to pull it all out. I'm just going to drop it down to 0.75. That's a stock adjustment that I use so it stays in my icons all the time. I'm going to drag and drop. You can see some of that green hue went away. And after that, we're going to close out SC&R. And probably my favorite tool that we've got in this whole thing is Easy Soft Stretch. Now I know there's a lot of people that like to use generalized hyperbolic stretch, and I do from time to time, but for the most part, I give it just an initial stretch with the Easy Soft Stretch. You can see my parameters here that I generally use, and then I just run it. After that, we make adjustments and it's quick too. Did you see how quick that was? All right, so next we're gonna pull the stars out, and I use Russell Croman's Star Exterminator. And you know, if you don't have that, you can use StarNet plus whatever your star removal technique of choice is. But I've got the full suite of Russell Croman's tools. We're just going to leave. Now, there's nothing really to adjust here, so we're just going to drag and drop. All right, now what I did is I made it's kind of a shortcut for me, but I made this pixel math that was cloned for stars. And so I can drag and drop that on there, and it'll automatically give me that same image with the stars header. But if you don't want to do that, you just go over here and you can double click, and then you can change that to stars. But it's one step closer, you know, or it takes a step out in my opinion. So I'm gonna cancel that, and then I close that one out. There's nothing been done to that image other than the stars were taken out. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to boost our curves and increase our saturation just a little bit. We come into our curves, and it's just basically all we're wanting to do here is increase the saturation a little bit for the next process. Got to remember to open the real-time preview so you can see what you're doing. You just boost it just a little bit. I always grab it. I'm going to reset the tool here. I always grab it at this center point, and I just pull it up just a little bit to give it a little more saturation. Going to apply that, and that's to me a little too much. We're going to close that out. I know that I didn't. You don't realize how much you're doing it till you go back and watch your videos, but I like to grab this header and move this around a lot for some reason. And I'm not the only one. But anyway, and I don't know why you want to move that around, but we do. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Bill Blanshan's new tool. You've got to have the new update for it to work, but I fully believe that it's worth it. You can still use his old normalization tools, his scripts, and you can download those from his YouTube channel, and I'll leave a link below on how to find all this stuff. But I really like the way you can adjust your colors in this new process that he has developed. And I'm sorry, I think his name's Michael, the guy that worked with him on this, but I apologize for not knowing that name. But Bill Blanshan's the one that brought it in on the YouTube channel to show us. So I'm going to reset the tool here, and I'm going to open up a real-time preview. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my blend mode down to 0.5. It's going to around 0.5. And then I'm going to boost my O3 boost. I'm going to bring it up to about 1.5. You gotta slide it a little bit and then give it a minute for the real-time preview to catch up. But about 1.5 on this image kind of really brings out the blue that I'm looking for in the middle here. So other than that, we can close the preview if you want to. And then we just drag and drop this over. All right, we're gonna close out this tool. And our next process is, what are we gonna do? Then let's look at the saturation just a little bit and maybe boost it a little bit more to help our mask isolate what we're trying to pull out. So we just boost that saturation a little bit, flavor to taste, whatever you like. Then we'll start here. Apply that. Close that out. Close out our real-time preview. And then we're going to we'll go ahead and open up this yellow mask. Well, I'm not going to open it. I can open it and show what it looks like, but still, if you've got Bill Blanshan's tools, it's just a drag and drop. Grab it, drag it over and drop it. And Bill's tools, he's also included a mask blur. It's basically just adding convolution to your mask so you don't see all the noise that's in there right now. We're going to run the mask blur, and we're going to run that twice. And then from there, all we got to do is take this yellow mask and then drop it over here into your mask receptacle. Then we're going to take it and we're going to drop this down here out of the way. Now you can hit Control K to show the mask and hide the mask, or you can right click on the image and go to mask and show mask. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our curves again. I like to work in curves. I come from Photoshop back a long time ago, and everything we did back then was in curves. I'm going to reset the tool. I'm going to hit the check mark to make sure we're on the right image and open up a real-time preview. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here to this red channel, and we're going to select it, and we're just going to boost it just to get some more red in that channel where we want it. And then again, this is a flavor to taste kind of thing. You do what you want to do and what you like, how your images to look when you're done. And then next thing I do is I come down to the green channel, and I grab it in the same place around the middle. We increase that a little bit, and then I take your low point here, which is where the histogram kind of crosses this curve, and then I pull it down so that we're not adding green to the darker side, the background model. And then I come back up here to my midpoint on the green channel, and I kind of adjust it to where the curve of the red line, or the red adjustment, and the curve of the green adjustment kind of line up towards the end, and that keeps our highlights from getting too much of a green cast. And then finally after that, we take and we bring our saturation back up just a little bit. And again, flavor to taste, you can boost it, But generally what I like to do is basically match the red curve. Just keeps it simple for me, honestly. We look at our preview and we like it, and then we're going to hit this square button to apply it. And we may go ahead and apply that same curve again, just to bring up that orangish hue that everybody likes in these HOO images. So we're going to apply that one more time. For me, that's enough. We're going to go ahead and remove the mask. Right click, go down to mask, remove mask. And what I like to do here, and the further along we get into the processing of the image, I like to come over here and I like to check the histogram from time to time and reset the tool and make sure that we're on the right image by hitting that check mark. Then we open up our real-time preview. If we want to, we can go ahead and drop these black points down just a little bit. We don't want to clip it. We just want to add a little contrast. But we'll apply that to the image, and we may come back in and do that again. But next thing we're going to do is we are going to, I'm sorry, the Georgia game's on right now. It's the only thing that's on. I'm watching Georgia game while we're processing this. Anyway, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run Noise Exterminator. And I'm just going to use the default settings that it comes with. You can tinker with it. You can do what you want to with it. But generally, this is enough for me just using the default settings. All right, that wiped out the noise pretty good. Zoom in here. Still, there's a little bit of noise in there, but it's not too bad. Most of that's going to get covered back up when we bring the stars back in. The next thing I like to do is I like my local histogram equalization. And I've processed this several times, and what I found on this particular image is if we drop our coronal radius down to 28, let's open up real-time preview. I keep forgetting to do that. We'll set our coronal radius, and then we're going to take our amount and we're going to make that 0.3. In the real-time preview, that looks like that's way too much, but for whatever reason I found that when you apply that, it's not that much that actually gets applied to the actual image. So we'll take the real-time preview and we're going to close that out just so we can see. And then we're going to take this triangle down here at the bottom and we're going to drag it over and drop it. And you'll see that it adds some structure to it, but nowhere near as coarse as it looked in the real-time preview. All right, so that 28 gets us in the fine scale. That hits this smoke or cloud or whatever you want to call it, dust up in this area. So next, we're going to go back to our local histogram equalization, and we're going to hit a broader spectrum of adjustment. And again, for this particular image, I found that 300 works the best. And then on amount, 300 works the best, or 0.3. We'll hit enter, and we'll get a real-time preview of that. And then we'll check it. I still can't make the Control-Shift-Z work on a real-time preview. Anyway, or Control-Alt-Z, whichever one it is. But you can see the difference that it makes in the image. That's before and that's after. Hits those highlights in a different place. We're going to close out our real-time preview, and then we're just going to drag and drop. This one takes a little longer to process through for whatever reason. I don't understand all I know about Pixinsight. All right, we're going to close that out. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to go back in again, and we're going to look at the histogram and see if we want to drop these shadows any. So we reset the tool, hit the check mark to make sure we're working on the right image. Real-time preview is open, and we're just going to drop these shadows just ever so slightly. in my opinion, there is the blackness of space, but you very rarely see it in the images we capture. So I try not to, I see a lot of pictures that drop this down where all you see is this core nebula here, but there's so much more going on outside of it. So I don't like to drop it down too far. I like that. It looks good to my eye. Close a real-time preview, and then we're going to apply that. But one thing else that you can do is you can see the histogram here. Our reds and our blues and our greens don't quite line up. Sometimes that's fine, but I found on this particular image, that our red is the furthest one back. So first thing we'll do is we'll take the green channel. We're just going to adjust this slider. We're watching the top box. This is our adjustment down in the lower box, and this is what's actually happening to the image. So we'll hit the real-time preview, because this is going to look bad when I start adjusting on it, but it'll work out. So we're just going to adjust this slider to kind of bring the green peak and the red peak into the same position. And then we're going to take the blue slider and we're going to do the same thing. We're just boosting these. We're basically, and I think you can do that a little bit here with the dark point, and you can also do it with your midpoint. But what we're trying to do is just try to get those peaks to line up on the top histogram. And once we're happy with that, close the real-time preview, and then we'll drag and drop. And then after that, we've balanced our histogram. Generally, one thing I like to do one more time is I take my SCNR with my green channel, drop down to about 75%, and then drag and drop that instance onto the image. It doesn't make much of a difference, but it's one of those things I've gotten in the habit of doing. Sometimes it makes a huge difference. Sometimes it makes very little difference. This is one of those very little difference being made. And really, we're basically done with our, there's one more thing we want to do. Go up here to scripts and go to our utilities, and almost right straight across is your dark structure enhance. And you can really boost this up, but what I generally do, it opens up with 0.4 as the amount. I'll drop that to 0.35 or 0.3, somewhere in there, and just run okay. And you'll start to see this dark nebula, and even in here with the elephant's trunk darken up just a little bit, gives it just a little more contrast. That's after, before, after, before, and after. In my opinion, I think we're pretty close to a completed image. But the last thing we got to do, good grief. The last thing we got to do is put our stars back in. So I've already got my stars named as stars to match up with my unscreened star pixel math that I've got, or rescreen stars pixel math that I've got down here in the bottom. But we need to have a starless image for all this to work. So we take another one of Bill Blanshan's tools, clone for starless, and all we're going to do is just take this instance and drag it and drop it over top. And that gives us a copy that's already got our starless name. I generally will minimize that, and I will put him up here with his buddy stars. And then, stop. Then we take my pixel math, which, as we talked about in the last video, this formula is the same formula that you see here in rescreening your stars. You just need to make sure your names match the names in your pixel math. If you use my tools, they automatically will be. Makes everything easy. So let's close that out, and then we just take and drag and drop. And I could probably come up with a better name than combined stars, but anyway, that's what we got for now. I'll probably change it to rescreen stars later. But for all intents and purposes, that is our final image. I think our stars have a pretty decent color to them. They're not, depending on where you pull them out, you can change your star color a good bit. I like to pull them out early, right after the stretch, so that SPCC has done what it needs to do, and then our soft stretch basically stretches the colors that it thinks SPCC or SPCC thinks the color should be. We pull them out. All right, so if we wanted to, we could. There's really not that much noise in it, but I do have a smaller instance of noise exterminator here that we could run and kind of adjust these, you know, if we wanted to put a little more noise removal in it. But to me, this really kind of looks good, so we're going to close that out. This Askar filter, the Color Magic 3 nanometer, very, very little star color actually gets through. I mean, you see when I opened it up, they were pinpoint stars almost to begin with. But if we wanted to run the star reduction, we could. And again, this is another one of Bill Blanshan's tools, and I highly suggest, well, it'd be kind of foolish of me to think that you're on my channel and not know who Bill Blanshan is. But, and I'd also think it's foolish of me to think that you don't already have the tools downloaded. However, if you're not, go check out his channel. He's got some really good in-depth reviews, or not reviews, but discussions on how he comes up with this math, and him and his partner. And again, I think it's Michael. I'll check that out and maybe put a little text up here in a minute. But we're going to look at his star reduction method 3v3. And, you know, it's basically, again, it's just a drag and drop. Pretty quick. And you can see it didn't change it much. There's before and there's after. These stars are already so small, they really don't need much adjustment or reduction at all. But anyway, that really is. Let me go check the histogram one more time in case we want to add a little more contrast. So we do have a little more room that we can, if we wanted to, drop the shadows down just a little bit. But honestly, I like a little brighter image. I'm just going to leave it as it is, and you guys are welcome to do with the data anything you want to. I will leave a link to the Google Drive so you can get the data. I'll leave a link to my tools that I use with the settings that I use. And that's really pretty much it. What was that? That's another 30-minute video. Yeah, 28 minutes. So, you know, really you can process these out pretty quick with Bill's tools, with Russell's tools, and with Dark Archon's easy processing suite. I realize that there's a lot more probably detail that can be brought out of that if you were to have like a mono camera with a straight up luminance channel or an HA channel. I also know that there's probably better ways to process this image. This is just how I do it. This is pleasing to my eye, and at the end of the day, that's who we really worry about, how we like our images to look. So for now, I appreciate you all stopping by and checking out my channel. Hopefully you found something informative or useful with it. And if you've got a better method, or you feel like I need to adjust or tweak something in a certain way, just leave it in the comments below. And we might come out with another video processing this same image. But for now, I hope everybody has a good evening, a good day, or a good morning, whatever time it may be in your part of the world. But for now, clear skies, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.